Welcome into a Wednesday edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. It's Wednesday, November 20th. Thanks for being with us. My name is Madelyn Burke, alongside the Super Bowl champ, Shaun O'Hara.
Hi, Madelyn.
Hi, Shaun.
Great to see you. You look refreshed, recharged, reinvigorated.
Got a little sunshine in the bye week.
Good
We'll
for
have
you.
to see it. You got to glow a little bit, get some vitamin D, get a little refresh, all that kind of stuff. Want to remind you all the phone number here, 201-939-4513. Find us on Twitter at #GiantsChat. And as a reminder, you can find the archive of the show and our entire podcast network on the Giants mobile app, podcast platforms everywhere, and giants.com/podcast. Yeah, I think it's good to have a little reset over the bye week. Come back fresh, ready to go.
Yeah, I think we were all looking forward to the recharge.
Yeah.
Haven't seen you in the flesh in 2 weeks. We had the Germany game kind of mixed in between all that bye week stuff. But yeah, I think we were going into thinking recharge, but it really is a reset.
It is a full-on reset. In case you haven't heard, the Giants have made a change at quarterback. Reboot. Giants are going with Tommy DeVito as QB1 henceforth. Drew Lock will remain the backup. They also signed Tim Boyle, who's going to be at the practice squad, according to Brian Dable today. Dable is currently addressing the media at his media availability. News coming out of that before we get to it. Kayvon Thibodeau, who's been out with a wrist injury, he had wrist surgery a few weeks ago. His practice window is open after being on IR for the last several weeks, and they're hopeful that he's going to be able to play this week against the Bucs. Tim Boyle, recently signed quarterback. He's been added to the practice squad as the fourth quarterback. Dable says they liked what he did in the workout. Tyree Phillips, welcome back to Tyree Phillips. He did a good job in the workout too, as he's back here with the New York Football Giants as they look ahead to the home stretch of the season. Drew Lock will handle the scout team. Usually it's the third quarterback, but the Giants are not having Daniel Jones do that. They're having Drew Lock do that. So these are the updates coming out of Dable's presser as of now. But Shaun, I think we want to get your take on this move at quarterback, because it's a significant change for this final 7 games of the season.
Yeah, it really is, and there is a lot to unpack here with this. Look, I don't think anybody is really that shocked by this move. I think, look, there were some whispers about this even a couple weeks ago that, hey, do they need to give somebody else an opportunity? And this is all about, like, how do we score points? Like, everybody wants to say, well, we want to provide a spark. Forget spark. We're not trying to start a fire here. We're trying to score points. That's what this is all about. Does a change at quarterback give us the ability to have some sort of a better opportunity to score? And I think as much as all of this blame, and I think Daniel Jones probably feels like it's all his fault, it's not his fault. I'm not going full Goodwill Hunting here.
Yeah.
It's not your fault, as Robin Williams said to Matt Damon.
Great scene.
But it is. It's not all his fault. Was he a contributing factor at times? Absolutely. Would he be the first one to tell you, hey, look, I needed to play better and I didn't? Yes. We're talking about a guy that tore his ACL a year ago. 10 days ago. And I think anybody that was in the building and saw the way with which he just threw himself into the rehab, and I'm coming back, I'm going to be 100%, I'm coming back better than ever. I don't even know if he actually feels like he is still 100%. Like, there are times when I see him out there and it's like, that doesn't look like the same Daniel Jones that we saw 2 years ago at his peak, putting the team on his shoulders, rushing for 2 touchdowns against the Indianapolis Colts, throwing for 2 touchdowns, winning a playoff game. That was peak Daniel Jones, and I don't think physically he's even at to that point. So, look, he's bearing a lot of the blame for all this stuff, but the offense has not been functional as a whole really all season. They have yet to play a complete game. They would get a first down, get a penalty, just drops, missed assignments. So there was a conglomeration of errors that led to all this, and ultimately, he's the one that falls on the sword for this. But why do you make that move, and why Tommy DeVito? I think this move had to happen. Obviously, there's financial implications with this, but the other guys in the locker room deserve an opportunity to try to find a way to win some games. That's what this is all about. We've got to find a way to win games. Look, I know fans will say, the season's over with. But as a player, you still have to go out there and put your body on the line. Like, you've got to go out there and play. And you've got to play 100 miles an hour. You've got to be committed to it. And I think that there's a part of that I know Brian Dable probably struggle with. Like, look, I have to make this change, not just for another quarterback coming in, but for the health of the entire team. Our offense has got to score points. We've got to find a way, and I've got to do everything possible to do that.
Well, and you got a lot of questions that you want to answer too about this team, and those questions, especially on the offensive side of the ball. I understand why Dable went with Tommy DeVito because, number one, he's a guy that last season Dable and DeVito met every single day. They have a really strong relationship. They kind of they have a familiarity with each other, and DeVito's got a whole nother year in the system under his belt. But the other situation as well to consider is that Drew Lock is on a 1-year deal right now. So for Drew Lock, if he goes out there and plays well, then it's like, okay, we got to reevaluate and re-sign this contract. Whereas Tommy DeVito, that's somebody that you can say, okay, let's see what we have here. Do we have something long-term here? Not just with Tommy DeVito, but with a lot of the players on this team. And is that a position that you can hone in on the long term at a more affordable deal than say some other free agent quarterback or veteran quarterback in the league or things like that? And so you want to see, hey, this is a guy who started 6 games, went 3-3 last season as a starter. Does he have what it takes? Can he rise to the occasion that we have seen flashes of on a consistent basis? And consistency, I think, is a lot of the reason that the Giants are in this position in the first place. I mean, this is the same team that went on the road to Seattle, beat the Seahawks with no pre-snap penalties, with the 12s at full volume, with discipline, with no neighbors, and no Singletary. And the discipline and the execution in that game is like, okay, this is the Giants team that we thought we had. The problem is, week in and week out, it's not consistent. And in Daniel Jones's career, he has had some moments and some games and some plays where you're like, this is a quarterback that they saw, that they said, yes, this is the guy that we can build the future around. But the problem is that it, and like you mentioned, still coming back from the ACL, there's a lot of other factors involved, but the lack of consistency in those moments, I think, is something that can lead to some frustration, because if somebody can do the job well sometimes is very different than somebody who does a job well and you can rely on them consistently.
Yeah, and the quarterback position, it's so hard when you're like this. Right. When you're up and down and it's that roller coaster. That's the one position you don't want to be on a roller coaster. You want that consistent play. I think it's a great point with Tommy DeVito coming in and the familiarity with the offense and the investment that they have already in him. Like, here's an analogy, all right? You have 2 cars at home. One is a lease, and you're giving that car back in a year. The other one you own. You own that car. Well, you've got $1,000, and you need to put tires on both cars. Which car are you going to put the tires on?
Yeah.
You're going to put it on the car that you own. You're handing that lease back. You're not going to put brand new tires on that car and give it to somebody else. So that analogy with Tommy DeVito, look, they're invested in him. They signed him as an undrafted free agent, paid him more money than guys that were actually drafted ahead of him in signing bonus. He's got starts. This will be his 7th career start. He has won football games for you. I think this really is an audition for Tommy DeVito and for his future in the NFL with the Giants or with somebody else if it's not here. But I think that was a big part of it. I also think Tommy DeVito can do some things that Drew Lock can't. Tommy DeVito can run the ball.
Right.
Like, you can run quarterback design plays and basically assimilate him into the offense, which you already have when Daniel Jones was in quarterback. So now you don't have to eliminate those plays. I don't know that Drew Lock has that same capability. He doesn't have that same skill set that, hey, we're going to ask Drew Lock to do these quarterback design runs like we did with Daniel Jones. So I think it's a little more seamless with that. Obviously, his familiarity with the offense, their familiarity with him. But I think there was a spark last year. Look, last year they beat the Green Bay Packers on Monday Night Football.
Right.
And it was Tommy DeVito that was bringing some energy and bringing some points to the offense. Look, he can get out of trouble with his legs if that happens. I think the one thing last year, look, he was thrown into the fire as a rookie, right? DJ goes down, Tyrod Taylor goes down. Next thing you know, Tommy's in there. And his first game,
Dallas.
I don't even think they didn't want to let him throw the ball. It was like, hey, at some point you have to pass. So he got thrown into the fire. And look, I think he showed, like, he didn't flinch. I remember him down in Dallas getting the snot beat out of him, and he bounced right up.
And like just, hit this celebration.
I'm not doing that yet. I'm not going to do it yet.
Oh, no, I'm reminiscing on what happened last year.
We gotta earn that this year again. But I think he does provide some different aspects offensively. There is some upside with him. I think, really, I'm curious to see how his decision-making has improved. And now I remember my rookie year, man, everything's coming at you at warp speed. Like, it just feels like, man, you're just like, you feel like you're doing everything you can to keep your head above water. And in year 2, it was like, okay, you know what? I know what to do now. Now I can just go out and do it 100 miles an hour and with confidence. Mm-hmm. So I would expect to see a more confident and a better version of Tommy DeVito right now than we did obviously last year. The decision-making and the getting the ball out, that to me is priority number 1. There were a number of times, even in the Germany game, but this year, where it felt like there were guys open and the ball just didn't come out.
Right.
It felt like there was an opportunity and the pass was never thrown. And I think those are the things that are frustrating as a coach, as a coordinator, and even as a player. If you're a receiver and you're open and the ball's not coming to you and you don't know why, that's frustrating. So I go back to my statement about, like, Brian Daboll, you can't lose a locker room because you're hanging with a guy that, you know what, maybe needs a little time to step back. So I think for Tommy DeVito, ball's going to come out.
Yeah.
He's got to be decisive and get the ball into the hands of the playmakers, because that has been the one thing that's been missing with this offense.
And here's another question in that regard, too, because I think you watch the offense and you think, okay, it's not just Daniel Jones. We've seen a lot of drop passes by these receivers. However, I will ask, the decisive nature, right? If you don't know exactly when the ball is going to come out, because at sometimes, like we've said, Daniel Jones will hold the ball a little bit longer. Sometimes he's a little bit more decisive. I think the expectation and the consistency in that timing as well could lead to some of those things as well.
100%. Yeah. I mean, if that ball is coming out and the receiver gets the ball as soon as he turns around, now there's opportunity after the catch. Whereas even if it's just a half second, now all of a sudden I'm waiting for the ball. Now the ball gets there. Defender had a chance to get on me. Now I catch it, and I'm tackled, or he breaks it up. So I think that changes how receivers and running backs and tight ends handle the yards after the catch aspect of it. That will be something that obviously they're working on this whole week. But getting that ball out, getting it out on time accurately, and then the other thing is, protection-wise, I think Tommy DeVito's in a totally better and different place now with a grasp of the offense and the concepts than he was last year. I remember talking to Coach Daboll last year, and they were like, we don't know what we're going to get with Tommy. Like, we got to see him play. We got to see what he sees and what he doesn't see. There were a number of times over the last couple of weeks that there was an unblocked defender, a blitzer, and there was no answer. There was no, like, hey, here's exactly where I need to go with the ball. So I'll be curious to see how that looks on Sunday against the Bucs. Against Todd Bowles, he's always been a blitz first kind of a defensive minded coach. So no doubt he'll find out, early and often what kind of blitz they've got dialed up.
Absolutely. Giants fans, make sure you go and subscribe to the Giants Huddle podcast. It features long-form interviews with Giants players, coaches, and front office staff, past and present. Plus, hear from the best analysts covering Big Blue and the NFL. Search for Giants Huddle and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, or simply go to giants.com/podcasts. And don't forget, if you're on Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star positive review for all of our Giants podcasts. Let us know what you think. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. 201-939-4513 is the phone number as we head to the phone lines. Cliff in New York is our first caller of the day. Cliff, how's it going? You're on Big Blue Kickoff Live with Madelyn and Shaun.
Hey, guys. It's going good. I hope all is well with you. And with the quarterback change, I think it relates to the bigger picture also. But before I get to that, I just thought the key to the whole thing was that business that you just mentioned, which we've heard before. There were people open and he didn't throw the ball. We heard that a year or two ago. I think the same thing from Coach. That they really wanted Daniel to cut it loose, and to be confident of throwing the ball down the field, as if they noticed that was an issue, And then I didn't remember hearing about it again for quite a while. In other words, let the ball rip and suffer an interception if you have to, because it's if you keep throwing the ball with some confidence, then you know, you're going to complete more to your team than the other team. So there was that big deal, and that, I think, goes to the personal relationship with the coach, because we heard a lot about this with Eli and Tom, getting our last 2 championships, along with the rest of the team, obviously. But there was a special relationship there, and I thought those 2 guys had at least 1, if not 2 more championships in them. But, you know, the organization went through what it went through, and we're finally beginning to turn the page on recovering from that, I think. And I think that a key to that was, you know, from the beginning when Eli stepped in, he had the complete and utter support and confidence and commitment from his coach, and it got nothing but better from what I was hearing as the years went by, even, you know, all the way until they parted, and then it was all over. This is a big deal that I don't think we hear enough about, because Daniel not letting the ball rip sounds like confidence to me, and just feeling good about what the coach is calling and what the offense is designed for on a deep enough level for it to work, because this stuff seems to be a lot more subtle than you can get from just watching the game on the TV. And the connection also that I'm trying to make here is that I'm a big fan of this regime because of what they did in Buffalo, and I've noticed that the Buffalo Bills have had sustained success, and it's still going 3 years after these guys left. And I didn't do the homework to see exactly when those 2 guys were hired, but I know they were big parts of it, and they brought that idea here about how do you bring something for sustained success, and that goes into these decisions that I just don't think we hear enough about, except on this show, and I'm optimistic about Tommy. I'm glad to hear he can run, because his first time around, what he mostly did was make sure he didn't cough up the ball by being sacked 8 times, which happened to him in more than one game, and he was just good at cowering back there and making sure he didn't make a bad play worse. And I didn't remember him running too much, so I was glad to hear yesterday and today on the show that he can run. And I was disappointed that we had to give up on Daniel, because I was hoping they'd give him the rest of the year. But if he wasn't showing the confidence to throw the ball when the guys were open, I think that was the bottom line.
Yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough one there, Cliff. Thank you so much for the call.
Yeah, I think disappointed is a good word. You know, I mean, that one always kind of resonates, you know, as like a kid when your dad, you do something and your dad comes in, he's like, you know, I'm not angry, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed in you. You know, like, it's like we all thought that more.
Yeah.
We expected more.
It's, and like, I think it's America's Next Top Model. I was rooting for you. We were all rooting for you.
I mean, look, nobody's more disappointed in this, obviously, than Daniel Jones.
Sure.
And I kind of have a little PTSD with this whole thing, because I kind of go back to how Daniel Jones got his start. Mm-hmm. Like, it was Eli Manning after week 2, they got benched, and they, you know, Pat Shurmur's the coach, and he says, hey, look, we're benching Eli after 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. To start Daniel Jones. Ironically, it was against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
That's right.
And then Daniel Jones' career erupted with a big win, and he actually had a rushing touchdown at the end of the game, and you know, that's where his career kind of started. So it's tough. It's tough anytime you see a quarterback, and I mentioned, you know, him coming off of the ACL injury, the amount of time and energy and sweat and blood that he put into even coming back to be ready for this year. Those are things that people will never know. They'll never see, never appreciate everything that he put into it. So I've gotten to know Daniel Jones over the last couple of years. Unbelievable kid. Like, he's one of those guys that, you know, you root for. You appreciate everything that he did. Not one time did you ever hear Daniel Jones blame anybody. He never blamed a receiver, a running back, a coach. He took it all on the chin. That type of leader is the kind of guy you want as a quarterback. So I think he did everything in his power to try to make it happen, and it didn't work out. And I think it's unfortunate for him. It's disappointing for him. It's disappointing for the team. You know, 2 years ago when he had that unbelievable season, Giants win a playoff game, he gets a new contract. The vibe here, I remember coming to training camp and we were doing a show. They brought in Darren Waller, and I mean, he was lighting it up. Like, they could not stop Darren Waller in practice, and everybody went into that season with all these great expectations about a playoff team coming back. And that season obviously didn't start off great, and then he got hurt, and it is not, nothing has gone right for him since then. So that part of it is tough. But you know, I think, you know, Cliff, we appreciate the call. We appreciate you chiming in and kind of, you know, adding to some of this stuff. You know, I think, yeah, this staff really, you know, they've got their work cut out for them now. And anytime you have a quarterback change like this during the season now, it's not like, hey, let's go back and look at our self-scout and see what we did well with Daniel now. Now it's kind of, we're going back to last year. What did Tommy do well? And I do want to just touch on one point Cliff brought up, the running aspect of it. Yeah. There is scrambling, and then there's designed runs. Like, I think Tommy can do both. He did scramble a lot last year. That Monday night game against the Green Bay Packers, I just looked up, he had 10 carries for 71 yards. Those weren't all designed runs, so some of that was him running out of the pocket. But he did have a lot of sacks. Like, how many times do you think Tommy DeVito was sacked last season?
A lot.
He started 6 games, played in probably like 8 or 10.
Do you want me to look it up?
No, I got it right here.
Oh.
37 times.
Whew, in 6 games.
I would have never thought it was that high.
Yeah.
But to your point, Cliff, like, look, when he came into the game in Las Vegas, that's when Daniel Jones blew his knee out. He comes into that game. He got sacked 6 times in Las Vegas. He got sacked 5 times in his first start at Dallas. He got sacked 9 times in the win, his first win in the NFL at Washington. 6 times he was sacked against New England the following week. And then he was sacked 7 times down there in New Orleans when, I'm pretty sure that was, got the doors blown off. Yeah. So there were a lot of sacks. Why is that happening? Well, you're holding on to the ball. You're not seeing things. You can't get through progression. A lot of things that you see from rookie quarterbacks. Look around the league at rookie quarterbacks this year and last year. They're getting sacked a lot. The key was he wasn't turning the ball over. He had just 3 turnovers, just 3 interceptions. And I think that's really what he's going to hang his hat on is, look, we got to take care of the football. Sacks, you can always punt after a sack. Turnovers, you can't win with. But that'll be something to kind of keep an eye on here as he goes back into a full-time duty here. Can he alleviate and eliminate some of those coverage sacks, some of those sacks where it took him too long to process and to get the ball out? I think the one thing that will help this offensive line is night and day compared to last year. Like, the offensive line that he was playing behind last year, Tyree Phillips was one of them, one of the starters who they picked up from the practice squad from the Eagles, and he literally started like that Sunday. So I think he was introducing himself to some of his O-linemen in the huddle. This offensive line is much more consistent. Obviously, you know, we didn't even talk about it, but Evan Neal made his first start at right tackle against Carolina in Germany. I thought he played really well. I thought the run game was his best part. He did get beat a couple times against Clowney, who's a heck of a pass rusher. But I think this offensive line as a unit is performing at a much higher level than the offensive line he played with last year.
And I think it's also important, too, when evaluating this Daniel Jones decision. Oftentimes, you know, when there's a change made in this significance, people think, oh, it's because that person wasn't good. Whether it's a change at a head coach, a change at a GM, a change at a quarterback, what have you. But it also, there's circumstantial situation that needs to be considered, right? It's not just this person is good or bad at their job. It's that the environment in which they were playing or producing was not good, and something had to change, because nothing changes if nothing changes. One thing I will point out, though, talk about sacks. Andrew Luck, the quarterback for the Colts, retired early because of how much he was getting beat up. Yeah. Andrew Luck played 86 games in his career and was sacked 174 times in 86 games. That's a lot. Daniel Jones has been sacked 208 times in 70 games. He has been sacked
That's almost
34 times more than Andrew Luck had in 16 games fewer. And Luck retired because of the beating he was taking. So I think if you look at the environment in which Daniel Jones has played the bulk of his starting career the last 6 years with these Giants, you got to at least factor in some of these external factors. This isn't about whether or not he's confident, whether or not he's decisive. Yes, those are playing a role, but also you got to think about why. Why is he that way? Why is he in that situation? Is because for years he had 300-pound men running at him every which way, and you know, when you compare it to a guy like Andrew Luck, who again retired because of the amount of impact he was taking,
and he's a mobile guy,
you know, and this is that I think is something to be considered.
Yeah, that's a great perspective right there, and I think, you know, that goes back to the whole "it's not your fault."
Yeah,
you know, it's not just your fault. Like there are a lot of factors here in play, and look, even John Mara went on record and said, "We've done more things in his career to mess him up. Like, we did not do him any favors." The offensive line for years was abysmal at best. No running game at times. Look, Malik Neighbors is really the first true number one receiver he's played with. No shade on anybody else, but like, he's different. He's never had a receiver like that. So, yeah, it's been a hard knock life, I think, for Daniel Jones, given that. And even though, like, when you think about how athletic Daniel Jones is, look, some of those sacks are on him, but that's an alarming amount of sacks. I mean, so it sounded to me, just rough numbers, guesstimates. Andrew Luck was getting sacked on an average twice a game. Daniel Jones was getting sacked on average 3 times a game. So that's huge. 3 sacks a game on average. I mean, that's some poor offensive line play, and some poor execution all around.
Yeah. And so it's definitely a tough situation, a tough curtain call for his season right now. But the Giants looking forward to another direction starting Sunday against the Bucs. And Giants fans, if you want to attend a couple games, take your fandom to the next level with a season ticket membership. Stay connected to the club all year round, not just on game days. Memberships are now available for the 2024 season. To learn more about all the exclusive member benefits, visit giants.com/tickets. Limited inventory is available. 201-939-4513 is the phone number as we go back to the phone lines. Mike in Fort Myers, Florida. Mike, you're on Big Blue Kickoff Live with Madelyn and Shaun.
Good afternoon, folks. One of the subjects I want to talk about is sort of at the end, and that had to do with some buddies of mine saying that they felt that Daniel Jones could have improved his timing if he took up skeet shooting. I've only shot skeet shooting twice in my life. These guys really do multiple skeet shooting shows where they've got 2 or 3 pigeons going up at any one time, and some of them are different colors, and you've got to shoot the red first this time and the blue first the next time. Anyway, that's gone, and I wish Jones luck. He gave his best. He laid his body on the line. What I did want to talk about is some detailed issues, and others I believe have talked about the receivers not getting first downs, and that they don't square off on their cuts. They're sort of looping. I don't know if you guys see that. I don't get a chance to see many of the Giant games. So that's the other thought. And finally, I know we brought back in another left tackle, but I've got an Eagle fan that blows in my ear and says that Andrew Thomas is injury prone, that as a percent of snaps, he's among the most injured of the tackles in the league. I have no way of knowing that, so I await your comments, folks.
All right, thanks, Mike, for the call. Appreciate it. First of all, let's address something. When you say you don't get to see many Giants games, what do we got to do here? Do we need a new TV? I'm not sure how that's possible. Do you need Game Pass? We can hook you up with that.
NFL
we can find
Plus.
a way. You can watch football on your phone, Mike. You can watch it on your iPad. So, look, if that was a personal choice, totally understandable. But yeah, we got to find a way to get you to watch some more games, and I'm sure we can help facilitate that. I will never promote anything to do with firearms and players.
Yeah.
Not a good mix. You want to play Duck Hunt on Nintendo? Go for it. You want to play Buck Hunter as a video game? Go for it. But that's a new one to me. I never heard of anybody saying, "Hey, you need to work on your trajectory, your vision." I think how about?
I mean, there are plenty of pigeons in New York, so
there's plenty out here in the parking lot.
Yeah,
I mean, if you want.
But I think I think the concept of the decisive, quick hand-eye coordination nature. Sure, there's probably other safer ways to do that.
Yeah, make the decision and hit a moving target. I think that's what you do in practice. But going back to your last point about Andrew Thomas, look, I mean, nobody's injury prone until they get hurt. You know, I think Andrew Thomas blowing his hamstring out a year ago, chasing a blocked field goal, that's not injury prone. That's bad luck. It's week one. You got a big guy that probably shouldn't have been running 40, 50 yards. That's bad luck. This Liz Frank injury, I mean, it's kind of a freakish thing. I went through one myself, and it's just kind of one of those things that happens. It happens when you're playing football. Do I think Andrew Thomas is injury prone? No. This dude's one of the hardest workers, trains in the off season the right way, puts in the time. I have no doubt he'll come back from this and be fine. But look, if you get hurt 2 years in a row, like, people are going to say, oh, well, now you're injury prone. And going back to the stats about left tackles, maybe in the last 2 years, but before that, he played 2 straight years. I don't think he missed a single game. I know he had an ankle injury his rookie year, but I don't think he missed a game for 3 years, and then he was a Pro Bowler 2 years in a row. So I'm not comfortable putting that label on Andrew Thomas right now.
Right, especially because, like you mentioned, the injuries that he's had are significant long-term ones. It's not like he's just getting a little ding here, a little nick there, and then oops, another.
Yeah.
And it is, sometimes it's just an unfortunate circumstance.
It's part of the game.
It's part of the game.
Unfortunately.
It's like Amani Toomer always says, he's hell when he's well. It just, hurts sometimes. But yeah. If you look at this upcoming schedule, Shaun, for the Giants.
Do we have to?
We're moving forward. 7 games left in the regular season. The change has been made. Tommy DeVito taking over under center, starting with this Week 12 matchup at MetLife with these Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Bucs have lost 4 straight, coming off a bye. The Giants lost 5 straight, coming off a bye. The Giants have yet to win a game at MetLife this season, so they're going to try to do that Sunday against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Then they're facing the Dallas Cowboys, who have not yet won a game at AT&T Stadium. So we'll see if the Cowboys win at home or if the Giants continue their better on the road than home splits.
Cowboys have not won a game at home either, huh?
Have not won a game at home yet this season.
I didn't have that or the Giants not winning a home game on my bingo card.
Yeah, exactly. It's why at the beginning of the season, when you look at these matchups on paper, it's so different. The New Orleans Saints, on paper before the season or even 2 weeks into the season, you would have thought this is a different matchup, but you've got that one. Then Baltimore Ravens, that's going to be a tough one at home against Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, and a team that's running through everything. But, starting, I guess, in the more immediate future with this Bucs game, you've got the possibility of Mike Evans coming back. The offense hasn't been the problem there, though, as much as it's been, the defense. That is something to take advantage of if you're this Giants team.
Yeah, and look, I think the Bucs, this is the time to play them. Obviously, offensively, they've really struggled, not just with Mike Evans being out, but Chris Godwin out for the year with a fractured ankle. This offense really changed, and you can kind of see all of a sudden Cade Otton came to life at the tight end position, and they started finding ways to get him involved. Liam Cohen, their offensive coordinator, has done a pretty good job, I think, of manufacturing plays for some of these other guys when you lose those 2 caliber players offensively. Baker Mayfield, look, like, he's one of those guys. He's either going to throw for 4 touchdowns or 3 picks. Like, he's feast or famine. You just don't want to let him get hot early. But yeah, this Bucs defense has been they've been kind of night and day here. They started off the season great, and then over the last 6 games, they've allowed over 23 points a game. So they've kind of had a little bit of a slide since week 5. They've given up the most passing yards allowed. So this is a great opportunity for the Giants. You're facing a team that's struggling defensively, giving up big plays, giving up a lot of pass plays. They can't get off the field on 3rd down as of lately. So this is a great opportunity for Tommy DeVito in this offense. I think Tyrone Tracy, and I can't wait to see him just get his first carry. Like, for him to have had to wait now 2 weeks after his last touch in Germany with the fumble. That's a long 2 weeks. It probably feels like 2 months. So
Yeah.
I think, for Tracy, this is a great opportunity for him to have a big game. And for DeVito, you're going against a defense that's struggling against the pass. This could be a great opportunity for him and Neighbors to really connect. I mentioned before, Todd Bowles, look, he loves his pressure packages. So that is going to be key number one for Tommy DeVito. At the line of scrimmage, pre-snap, what are they doing? They're going to try to disguise you. They're going to try to confuse you. They're going to have safeties down at the line looking like they're blitzing. On the snap, they're flying out of there. They're going to do the inverse. They're going to be back there looking like cover two, and then one of them is going to fire down right before the snap and come off the weak side, and they're going to be playing single high or zone covered. So he loves a lot of zone blitzes as well, and he will give you a lot of different looks up front, try to confuse the protection. So that's going to be a big challenge. And the one thing I always used to say whenever we're playing a defense like that, Madelyn, you know what you do? You get up the line, you quick count them. Mm-hmm. All right, if they want to have guys moving all around and disguise all stuff, boom, get up the line, quick count, and run the football.
Yeah.
You run the football, now all of a sudden it kind of takes that teeth away from that defense.
And having a threat of a run game, I mean, it's so simplistic and is so commonly said, but it's so true, and the more you can depend on and establish the run early, and you get Tyrone Tracy, who, can get some chunk plays, and he is, he's great at yards after contact.
He's got that burst.
Fierce runner, and he's got that burst, the decisiveness.
Little spin move in there too.
Yeah, he's definitely not afraid to hit the B button, like get a little spin going on there.
I like it.
And so, yes, that'll be a lot of fun to watch this weekend as well at MetLife Stadium. Giants fans, the Giants' official connected TV streaming app, Giants TV, brings original video content and game highlights on demand and direct to Big Blue fans. Giants TV is free on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire TV, and on the Giants mobile app. 201-939-4513 is the phone number as we go back to the phone lines. Scott in New Mexico. Scott, you're on Big Blue Kickoff Live with Madelyn and Shaun.
Hello, Madelyn. Shaun, how are you doing today?
What's up, Scott? Great.
Doing well.
Madelyn, you made one of the more salient points I've heard this season, and it was in regards to the number of sacks that Daniel Jones has suffered. 2 weeks ago, I called for Daniel Jones to be benched, not because he was playing badly, which obviously he has not lived up to, hopefully, what the Giants wanted, but because I think psychologically he was not in a good place. And I'll tell you why. The Hard Knocks show, and you're seeing somebody on the show basically wanting to replace you. The psychological effect of that, imagine if someone said, Madelyn, I don't think you're doing really great. And they tell you that, and they're looking for somebody else. That has to have an effect on you. And in regards to the sacks, which you would very adroitly addressed, he was sacked 208 times, as you said. And I compare his career analogous to David Carr. I don't know if you know how many times he was sacked.
76 times his rookie year.
Rookie year, right?
That's
and 276 times in his career, which I think
he holds the record for
years.
most times sacked in a season.
Correct. So I sort of attribute that.
267 sacks for David Carr, yeah.
Yeah, and so I channeled their careers similarly.
94
but
games.
also you can't excuse also, and people will do this, the abysmal tackling the Giants have had this year. Mm-hmm. And that's also part and parcel to the coach's ability to be able to train, because you're in training camp. You know how you're supposed to tackle. You know how you're supposed to play, and yet the Giants don't do that.
Yeah.
And Shaun, as a former player, I'm sure you recognize that in training camp and in preseason games, you're taught what to do, and either you accept that challenge or you don't. And the real key, I think, for the Giants this year, and I'm looking forward to seeing what Tommy DeVito can do. I'm not saying he's going to be the number one quarterback. I'm just trying to see if there'll be a difference in the way the Giants play. But as I said, I wanted to defend Daniel Jones because I think because of the fact that they were looking to replace him from the beginning of the season in that show. He's a person too, and he saw that. And that puts additional pressure on you as a person as well as a quarterback. And I hope as we move forward in the season, no matter what the end results are, that the Giants recognize that there are more people that are culpable in this than just Daniel Jones, as Shaun, you properly addressed. And those issues have to be addressed as well. And it's a defensive problem as well as an offensive problem. And until we play as a cohesive unit, I don't see any hope for the Giants either this year or next year until we get these problems fixed. And I'm trying to look ahead. I try to find resolutions as to how we can fix things. Right now, I'm not sure I see the resolutions to fix all the maladies the Giants are suffering. So perhaps you can give some insight of what you see on the field and whether there's a way for the Giants to redeem themselves in the last 7 games they're going to play and act like a team. And I'll make an analogous also to a team like Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh doesn't always have the best team in the league. They have great players, as the Giants have great players. Watt is probably one of the best in the NFL. And Mike Tomlin always has them being competitive. It doesn't matter who their person. They can change personnel left and right, but you see them repeating year after year a certain sense of competitive energy, which I don't see in the Giants' persona. So I was wondering if you can comment on this. And to quote Shakespeare, and hopefully both of you took Shakespeare in school, there's a famous play called Richard III. And in that, the first line is, "Now is the winter of our discontent." And I think we're in for that for the next 7 games. And I think, hopefully, as a longtime Giant fan, I hope they will recognize their own shortcomings and not heap everything on Daniel Jones. And John Mara had addressed this, that he had failed Daniel Jones in the very beginning. But I think Daniel Jones needs to be on another team. So again, I put a lot on your plate.
Yeah.
So hopefully you can answer
Appreciate
some of the
it.
questions, and I'll get off the air now.
Scott, it's right on cue with Thanksgiving. We load up the plate, man. Like just when you think the plate is full, you can always add a little gravy on top of the stuffing.
I appreciate the thoughtful call, Scott.
Yeah, I like it. I like he dropped a little Shakespeare on us too. I mean,
Yeah,
look, let's
Richard
go.
III,
I think Giants fans can really, they can definitely relate with that. I think right now Giants fans they're star-crossed lovers right now, and it's the Montagues and the Capulets, and they're just over there saying, "Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou, Romeo?"
Yeah.
Like their Romeo is the quarterback, right?
Yeah.
That's where they're trying to find. I will say this, and Scott brought up the point about had to put extra pressure on Daniel Jones because he saw Hard Knocks, and because of that show that they were trying to replace him. Here's the deal: when you're in the NFL as a player,
They're always trying to
replace you every single year.
Yeah.
Like at no point in time in my career was I like, I'm good. Hey,
And even
that is what drives you. That's what drives you in the offseason is, look, I got to earn my spot. I got to earn my salary. I've got to earn it. Daniel Jones, from the minute he signed that new contract, he knew I've got to live up to this.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're saying, who's culpable? And look, I don't play the blame game. I think everybody in this building feels like they are all responsible for this. They're all responsible for the losses, for it not working out, because they all went all in. John Mara was all in, Joe Shane, Brian Dable. Everybody went all in on Daniel Jones and said, look, we're going to try to find a way to win with Daniel as our quarterback. We're going to upgrade the offensive line. We're going to add some playmaker here. We signed with this contract, and it just didn't work out. And it's nobody's fault. Nobody did anything wrong here. It just, that's the nature of the beast. That's football. You think Jerry Jones is happy about the fact that he's paying Dak Prescott, $60 million, and he's on IR and they haven't won a single game at home? Like, that's just the game. That's the NFL. And from a business standpoint, as a player, you always know that they're trying to replace you. Here's a story for you. I won't name him, but one of my fellow offensive linemen, we were training and working out in the offseason. This was right before the draft. We get out of the weight room. We come into the cafeteria. We're having breakfast. And they're having players come in that are eligible for the draft. They had a player come in. He was a tackle, a prospect. They brought him into the cafeteria, and they asked one of our starting offensive linemen, hey, this is so-and-so, we just want to introduce you to him. And it's like, you're bringing this guy in here and introducing me while I'm eating breakfast or lunch, And you're going to draft him to replace me, and you want me to be nice to this guy? You want me to show him around the facility, give him a tour, like, hey, here's my locker. You want to see where I live too? You want to meet my wife? Like, what are we doing here? No, that is the business side of the game. You see it as a player. You see it happen every single year. So do I think that added any extra pressure to D'Angelo's? No, I don't. I think he understands the game. He understood it when he got drafted. The longer you're in this league, you understand that the business side of this, it's sticky. It's really tough. It's not kind, and I always told people, you spend the first 5 years of your NFL career trying to make a name for yourself, trying to create a position and kind of create a legacy. You spend the rest of your career trying to hang on to it. Yeah. Because somebody's coming every single year to get your job, and they're cheaper, they're younger. That's just kind of the nature of the beast.
It totally is. And I do appreciate and respect the empathy in that sentiment, Scott,
Yes.
because it is true. And I think too often sports fans forget that these are people with feelings and emotions. And even if you understand the nature of the business, and, he likened it to me, I understand the nature of the business. You understand the nature of the business. I mean, there could be, it still sucks. I mean, who knows? Like, they could find somebody next year. They're like, hey, listen, Madelyn, we appreciate you, but this person is we're going to go with that person instead. And it could always happen. And it's hard, but the only thing you can control is what you can control, is what you do every day when you show up to your job, and what you put out there on tape and what have you. And I do understand, though, that there is a little bit of a challenge between understanding that concept and seeing it.
Yeah.
Like, I understand the concept of the fact that my job isn't like a long-term security thing that they're never going to replace me. I understand that. But if I am seeing them interviewing other people for my job and just not succeeding in finding someone, so they're like, oh, I guess we'll stay with the one we got, I will admit that would probably like move the needle a little bit. Doesn't change the fact that I understand that, and doesn't change the fact that I'm going to put my best foot forward every day. But I can understand how in those moments where things aren't going right, you kind of revert back to that part as well.
It almost kind of makes you tougher too, in a sense, because you're like, you know what, like, there's noise over there. I hear it, but I'm not listening to it. I'm going to turn it off. Like, and in Daniel Jones' case, I guarantee you this: he has not looked at social media.
No,
like maybe in years. Like, and that he may have very well never even watched that Hard Knocks, because he may have said, you know what, I'm not going to watch that because there might be something in there that is going to piss me off. And now I got to go and see that guy. So I didn't want to know about it.
Or if he did, he's never going to admit it. Like me, when I read negative comments about myself, I'm not responding. You don't know that I saw it. You're screaming into the void for all.
Haters going to hate.
Haters going to hate. Potatoes going to potate. I also like.
I haven't heard that one before.
We're remixing things on a Wednesday. I also like the point that Scott brought up too about the Steelers. And yes, it's been 21 straight seasons that they've had a winning record above 500. And, Mike Tomlin and his tenure as head coach, of course, some of those were Cowher, but Mike Tomlin and his head coach never had a season below 500. And a lot of that, whomever is the personnel, whomever is on the roster, they find a way. And a lot of that is the culture. I'd liken it to the San Antonio Spurs under Greg Popovich for years. You've got Tim Duncan and Tony Parker going down, and then you've got some, kid out of San Diego State who you've never heard about, Kawhi Leonard. Let's put him in. And then he comes in. And I think when you build a culture of success for a sustained period, now, granted, Spurs had their shortcomings as well that got them Victor Wembanyama. But again, when you build a culture of being used to success and used to winning, and that is the norm rather than, well, this is an environment where we usually lose, so this is the norm, and wow, we won a game, that's fun. There's a different cultural mindset around that, and creating that does take time. You can't microwave that. No. Like that is something that is manifested over time. It's a slow cooked brisket. I'm trying to think about, like, the Steelers to me are, I mean, when you look at that aspect of it, from ownership to coaches, they're the gold standard. All right, maybe call it the yellow standard, since they're yellow. Black and gold, I think in my lifetime, there have been 3 head coaches for the Steelers. Yeah. Right? It was Chuck Noll, then it was Bill Cowher, and Mike Tomlin. Yeah. Like, in my lifetime, 3 times. There have been 3 different head coaches of the New York Giants here in the last 5 years. Yeah, 6 years. So that right there in itself, you're not even comparing apples to apples. Like, we're talking, the Pittsburgh Steelers are the gold standard when it comes to consistency, breeding championships. They don't turn over the head coach. Yeah. They have a new GM this year, who took over, and that right there was kind of new. Like, wow, we've got change. Yeah.
in the front office, that's stuff that just doesn't really happen there. And I think when you look at how well that has done for them, and like the good that consistency has helped them breed, that's a huge part of it. So, you know, I don't know, maybe Chuck, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there was 4 coaches, but I can only think of 3 coaches in my lifetime throughout the entire Steelers. So like the last 47 years. I don't know, when was Chuck Noll the coach? We got our stat reporter.
Chuck Noll was 1969 to 1991, followed by Bill Cowher from 1992 to 2006. And Mike Tomlin took over in 2007 with one Ben Roethlisberger at quarterback.
Since 1969, they've had they're
3
on their 3rd coach.
Yeah.
Like that right there that's mind-blowing.
And I think that also culturally, when you know that you accept a job in that situation, when you know that you're going to have time to build what you need to build, rather than accepting a job and knowing, well, the last 3 guys before me only had 2 years before they were ousted, so let me press and let me rush it. Like you said, there's a difference in taste when you microwave or when you slow cook. Yeah. And if you have the freedom to do things the right way, rather than pressing and saying, let me hurry up and make sure that I can prove myself in this timeline before they decide to move on to the next one, I think that creates a different environment as well. And it creates an environment in which you feel like, okay, I can exhale and do my job well instead of doing it in a press.
You got to be hungry now.
Yeah.
It's a great comparison. Like meat tastes different out of the microwave.
Yeah.
Like the slow cooker is the way to go.
It's the way to go.
So it's all right, what do I really care about? Do I really care about flavor, or do I just want it right now?
Yeah. Do I want it hot and warm?
And usually you're like,
I don't know if you've had a microwave chicken breast, but I would hard pass.
I do not want a microwave pork butt.
No.
Put that baby in the slow cooker. Get the pork shoulder, that cannot be microwaved.
You need to take time, and when you take time, it breeds excellence and consistency.
And the meat, and it just falls off the bone.
Falls off the bone.
It gives the flavor. It gets to soak up the environment.
Yeah,
and,
the juices. 201-939-4513. We're getting hungry here on Big Blue Kickoff Live as we head back to the phone lines. Jeff in Rhode Island is on the line. Jeff, welcome to Big Blue Kickoff Live. You're on with Madelyn and Shaun.
Yeah, good afternoon, Madelyn and Shaun. And Shaun, thank you for being a good player for the New York Giants all those years.
My
I
honor.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now, one thing you don't want to be doing is microwaving your turkey next Thursday either. So
Definitely
make sure
not.
You're not doing that.
If you're doing that, you're having Thanksgiving by yourself.
Exactly. Or with the fire department.
Or you're at work.
Yeah. Now, this I've been a Giants fan since 1967, since when Fran Tarkenton came on board. So I've seen a lot more bad years than good years. But there's a couple of things that are bothering me right now. I've been seeing and reading online and other places of comments from the Fire Everybody crowd. And I've never been one of them. I'm willing to give Joe and Brian a couple of more years. I don't care if it takes 2 or 3 more years to get it right. I'm just willing to give them the time. I'm not going to give up on them because I think they're doing a good job in spite of the record. But, eventually we got to start winning. So,
yeah.
And I don't know. There was a couple other things. I don't know. I can't remember what the heck I want. I should have written them down. But, it's just I don't want to see anything happen to them. And especially, in regard to the draft next year, we cannot. And I'm sure Joe knows this, but you can't be reaching for a quarterback in next year's draft. Now, I think the right way to go would be to sign a bridge quarterback and draft the guy that you really want. The year after that in 26, see how that plays out. But, Joe and Brian, they shouldn't have to walk the plank for a quarterback they didn't draft, who didn't work out. They didn't draft them.
Yeah.
They shouldn't have to pay the price, in my opinion. In any event, that's all I get to say today. So thank you, and I'll be calling you guys again. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks, Jeff. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Keep that turkey out of the microwave.
Yeah.
I do appreciate what he said too. And if you look at the draft class this year, I mean, you've got Malik Neighbors, you've got Tyrone Tracy, you've got Tyler Nubin, you got Drew Phillips who's been balling out, you got Darius Muasa who's got the only interception for the Giants this year. I mean, the draft class this year was a huge success. It does take time to build this stuff. I like that he, has pointed to the fact that they've got something in the making here, but you need to give it a little bit more time.
Yeah, and the Giants, they lead the league, I believe, in snaps by rookies this season. So it is definitely a testament to what they did in the draft and how they've definitely hit on a lot of guys. I think when you look at the quarterback and the draft process, it is flawed. Like just everybody's like, hey, we want a high draft pick and don't reach for a quarterback, don't do this. A great case study is the 49ers. Like a couple years ago, they moved up to draft Trey Lance,
who didn't even get playing time in a blowout for Dallas last week.
Like they moved up to get this guy. Look, they took a big old swing and they missed and they whiffed and they realized it. They cut their loss. They trade him. Brock Purdy was he Mr. Irrelevant?
Yep, last pick of the draft.
So you mean to tell me that, like, all right, they got Trey Lance and everybody's like, you got to give up draft capital to get this guy, and now Brock Purdy is their guy. So you don't have to get a quarterback in the first round. Like that's not, Tom Brady was not in the first round.
No.
I look at Dak Prescott was a 4th round pick. So look, ideally you would like to get a stud quarterback, and usually they are in the first round. But I mean, look, Bryce Young. I mean, until he played the Giants in Germany, he didn't look good this year. He got benched. I think you look at the last couple of years, like hindsight is always 20/20. Even in the draft class with Josh Allen, you had Sam Darnold, who went number 2 overall. You had Baker Mayfield, who went 1 overall.
Josh Rosen,
who's out of the league.
11 overall, not in the league.
Like every year, it's always there's a quarterback. Bo Nix is a great example too.
Yeah.
There were people that laughed at you if you told them he was a 1st round draft pick. Right now, the way he's playing, like he probably should have gone in the 1st round.
Zach Wilson, number 2 overall pick.
Yeah.
Right now, now he's a backup, and it is an inexact science.
It's a flawed process. You hope that I've talked to many GMs before, and they're like, look, when it comes to draft picks, like you hope you go 50-50. Like if anything above that, like you're doing really well. Like you don't want to go 1 for 3. If you're batting 30%, you're probably gonna get fired. Yeah. But it's not a lock. And I also, there were a lot of people that thought, boy, the Giants needed to draft a quarterback this year. They needed to move up. And you know what? I think the Giants looked at the options. Hey, we like this guy. We like this guy. What's the cost? I always laugh when my wife always asks me, like, hey, which one of these dresses do you like? And I'm like, where's the price tag? Like, I can't give you an opinion until I know how much each one costs. Like, same thing.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, we like these quarterbacks. What's the cost? You want two future 1st rounders? No, I don't like them that much. So I think you have to give credit to the Giants for not mortgaging the future and saying we're going to go get a guy right now, because I think coming into this season, I don't think that this Giants team is just a quarterback fix away. Like there are a lot of things that they need to upgrade and fix along with that position, and try to upgrade the play at that position. So you've got to look at all of those factors. Look, we don't know how the season's going to shape out and what pick they're going to be at, but at least if you're up there and you have a top 5 pick, you've got a chance to maneuver either up or back if you do find a guy that you fall in love with.
And, hindsight is 20/20. I've seen Giants fans on social media saying, well, the Giants should have gone after Russell Wilson this year. That would have been the answer. First of all, the beginning of this season, you didn't know what you had Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson in Denver did not look like Russell Wilson in Seattle. And are you going to put everything you have in the franchise on I don't know if he's still got it guy? I don't think so.
Well, what makes you think Russ didn't talk to the Giants? And if you were Russell Wilson, would you have taken the Giants over the Steelers right now?
Exactly.
Like if you're a quarterback and you're Russell and it's like, hey, I want a chance to play this year. Do I have a better chance of playing in Pittsburgh or with the Giants, who you already have Daniel Jones? So Russell, to me, was never even an option, because I don't think he would have chosen to come here over one of these other places.
Exactly. He wanted to go to somewhere that he was the clear-cut QB1, and that's what he did. But, you look at the quarterback translation from college to the NFL, too, and there are so many things that make it different. I mean, the hash marks are at a different spot. The geometry of the game is different. There's so many little things. Malcolm Gladwell, who's a writer for The New Yorker for a long time, he's an author. He's one of my favorite authors. He's got several books. But he wrote a piece for The New Yorker years ago about the quarterback problem, comparing it to teachers. And somebody could know trigonometry like the back of their hand, and they could be like Goodwill Hunting, walk down this and see a thing. I know it, but can I teach it? Does that skill translate? If you know it, can you teach it? And they likened it to, okay, you're a good college quarterback, but does that translate to the NFL? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. And sometimes you're a middling college quarterback, but the skills that you have translate better than the other ones. And, you know, you mentioned the 1999 draft when you've got Tim Couch, Donovan McNabb, Achilles Smith, Dante Culpepper, and Cade McNown. And these are 5 quarterbacks that you thought, these are going to be all Hall of Famers, this and that. And how did that shake out? How did that translate? You know, you don't always know. It's such an inexact science about what's going to come out in the quarterback position. So when we're looking at the draft situation, you're looking at, oh, the Giants need to tank for this player or go after that player. You really never know. And, you know, there are very few Heisman winning quarterbacks that have gone on to be Super Bowl champion quarterbacks in the NFL.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not, I mean, I've always, as a player, you always feel like, too, like one player is not going to change an entire team. I mean, he can help you win football games, but to ask a guy to come in with a first, second, third, or fourth pick overall and to be, you know, save the franchise, that's a lot. You know, you bring up the 99 draft. I played for the Cleveland Browns. I was there in 2000 after the Browns had drafted Tim Couch. And it was a new franchise, and it was like, man, it was a lot on him. And, you know, it didn't work out in the long run, but you know, just like with Daniel Jones, it wasn't all Tim's fault. Like, there was not a lot going on around him. David Carr, you mentioned that. He got sacked 76 times his rookie year. Charlie Casserly, the general manager, said, the only reason I took Carr over Bush, because everybody hammered him for saying, why would you not take Reggie Bush? That's that whole Saquon conversation.
Yeah.
He didn't take Reggie Bush because he said, I have two tackles. And they had picked up Tony Baselli in the expansion draft, who was his left tackle, and he said, I drafted a rookie quarterback number 1 overall because I thought I had 2 pillars at tackle. Tony Baselli ended up tearing his shoulder and never played for the Houston Texans, and so he never had that cornerstone left tackle, and that's part of the reason why David Carr got sacked 76 times. But those are all things that go into play when you're looking at, all right, who are we going to take, and you know, who's the most value. But you know, I also like, you look at like Drake May right now. Right, he's struggling. So even if you draft a quarterback at 3rd overall, Jaden Daniels is a little bit of an outlier. What C.J. Stroud did last year as a rookie is a little bit of an outlier. I think the norm is like you're going to struggle for another year with a rookie quarterback. Like there's going to be some growing pains and some tough sledding.
Yeah, but you got to learn through it, and you got to be patient. You got to grow through it, and you got to put the environment around a quarterback to have the best possible scenario to grow and to succeed. You got to plant and soil, not, you know, sand.
Got to fertilize.
Yeah. Exactly. You know, we got a lot of great analogies on the show today.
Got to feed them.
Always appreciate it. That's our show today. Shaun, welcome back from the golf trip. Good luck, War Eagles.
Here we go. Franklin Lakes War Eagles in the Super Bowl Saturday, 12 o'clock.
Super Bowl Saturday. Let's go.
We're going down Pequannock.
Young Jack O'Hara. See if you can get ready. That's a wrap for our show today. Big Blue Kickoff Live, brought to you by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. Thanks for listening to today's episode, part of the Giants podcast platforms everywhere, and giants.com/podcasts. We'll see you next time.